Look at all this. I've just hit the applique jackpot. I'll be showing you some of these and how you can sew this onto a woven top, tank or blouse. Super practical. You can make your clothes really unique with these pieces. Stay tuned. Hi sewing friends, I'm Karina from liftingpinsandneedles.com. Welcome to this channel that is all about sewing, limitless sewing. Today I'm really excited to share two new harmony blouses. This is a pattern from Love Notions that is the Feature Friday pattern for today. That means it's only $5. That's about 60% off, so huge discount. And I've made this pattern 4 times in the past. I've had a lot of fun with it. I've never made it as intended as like the proper harmony. It's always been hacks and things I've done to it. So that's fun. But this time I have 2 new ones to share where I haven't done real hacks. I made one for my mom, I made one for myself, and on one of them I used a really interesting applique. Now, you might think, is she doing the same video she did like a few weeks ago? No. A few weeks ago I made a video about an applique also, but I've sewn that onto a knit project. It was a sort of round type of applique I put onto one of my belladonna tops. Actually, the sewing technique could be super different if you're sewing it onto a knit than to a woven, so it is not exactly the same thing at all, and that's why I always knew I was going to make a separate video on wovens. You can't do the same technique, it's just totally different. So here I am today to show you how I'm doing mine. Of course it's customized to my applique. Mine had a partial armhole right here, a neckline and a little shape down the front, so I adapted my sewing to that. But you know, you can adapt your sewing to anything. Harmony blouse is a great one for this project. It's perfect. And the harmony has already been updated to include up to size 5X. There's a full bust and a standard bust option. I've made different sizes for my mom and myself this time. My mom is a size M with a full bust. She used to have a 3-inch difference between her high bust and full bust, so I have sewn a standard bust for her in the past. But when I measured her now, she had a 4-inch difference. So that puts her into the full bust sizing. So I did that for her and it's perfect. It fits really well. And the only change I made to hers was lower the bust up by 1 inch. For mine, I sewed an extra large with the standard bust and I lowered my bust up by 3/8 of an inch. Last time I made my other harmony blouses, I was sewing a size large, so I couldn't use that pattern that I had already printed out. I'll just show you little snippets of the ones I made in the past. Love Notions Feature Friday pattern for today is the harmony blouse. It's only $5. It's been updated to include the full size range up to 5X. It's a great woven classic with a comfortable swing style and a regular bust option and a full bust option for a great fit. There is a bust start there. At the back there is a center back seam for shaping and a little slit on the top, although it's more decorative because the neckline is scooped. You can really get your head in and out without sewing the slit. On this photo you can see that at the back there's a little opening, like a little slit that you can sew on, a little loop with a button. That is mainly decorative because the scoop neckline is large enough for you to be able to put your head through. So I did sew that with my first version, and then when I figured out I could just do that, I didn't do that for any of the other ones. All I did was fold that little bit of paper away, just fold it back and then pretend it's not there and just sewed my seam allowance at 3/8 all the way down. Super easy if you don't want to try that little slit there. I've played with the dart placement and rotated the dart up to the neckline to create gathers on the neckline with a little drawstring. I've also used the pattern to resize a really cool thrifted blouse I bought. I put the pattern pieces on top. It's a great pattern for your nice drapey wovens. Find all the videos I've made about the harmony down below, my affiliate link. I do make a small commission if you purchase through there. And always use my code Karina10 to buy patterns anytime, any day, and you always get 10% off even when there's a sale like today. Let me show you my mom's version. You've probably seen this fabric before with a pair of shorts I made her a few weeks ago. She loves green. This is 100% rayon and it's just so floaty and so gorgeous. And I would suggest for a woven swing style, you always choose fabrics that flow really nicely, like rayon twill, tencel twill, crepe, silk. Those types of fabrics have a beautiful flow, are going to be super nice because all this extra volume is just going to drape beautifully. Don't use cotton, don't use chambray, don't use that type of fabric. It's just going to stand out away from you. So keep it light, keep it flowy, and you'll be good. I used store-bought satin bias tape for this one right there. I did have a sizable amount left of this one and I really didn't want to cut into it just for the sake of binding. So I've got enough to make myself a cami. So that's why I use this binding, but it's just as nice and just as well done. Have a look at this video to see how to sew that. I show it in detail. So let's see it on. My mom loves it. She loves the style. This is my mom's lovely harmony blouse. It's a size M with the full bust option. No changes here except for lowering the bust up by 1 inch. This is a really flowy rayon, 100%. It's very light, very flowy. Love the style, sleeveless, nice and fresh to wear. She chose this one from my collection, so she's really happy with it, and so am I. Look, I tried to get my mum to consent to some sleeves. I said, look at these short sleeves or flutter sleeves, because I've never actually sewn sleeves onto the harmony. All the ones I've made have been sleeveless. And it's because we just like our arms out in the wild, you know, we like to have free arms mainly when it's hot. So she wasn't sold on having sleeves. So maybe I'll put on sleeves eventually when I make this pattern again, because I am not done with it for sure. So let me show you some of these appliques I found. Look, when I went to Sao Paulo a few weeks ago, I saw a shop that sold so many. I was so excited. And when I went to see them closer and choose them, they were all white. Like all of them, they had about 1,000 styles and shapes, and they were all white. So back then, I think this is the only one I got. It's not too large, not too small, and it would be really good for a neckline. I could also put this at the back if I wanted to, just to give it something at the back. But, you know, I was just really disappointed that they just sold white ones. Just yesterday, my husband took us to a nearby town that sells fabrics. There's a lot of fabric shops there. It's called Americana. And just driving by a street, I saw a shop I'd never seen before, and outside they had like a box full of appliques, and I could see them from the street. I'm like, oh my gosh, stop. So my husband parked there and we got off and saw. And I thought they would sell the appliques by unit, like you pick one and you pay for it, and no, you would weigh them. So if you got a whole bunch and weighed them according to the weight, that's what you paid. It was so affordable. So I ended up rummaging through and getting so many. You'll see these pop up in my projects now that I have so many, because I only had 2 in the past. Look at this. This one's long like this. If I sewed this onto a top, I wouldn't trim away the fabric from underneath, because then I would be showing everything. So then this would be more of like just decoration on the center. Love it in brown, super nice. I think I got 2 of those. Look, this is, I'm not sure what this is. I think they might be collar pieces. Like, I'm not sure why they're together like that, but I like the beige, and it's a little bit goldish actually. There's a bit of lurex in here. I don't know what I do with it, but it's pretty. I got it. Look at this black one. Some of them are medium size, some are tiny. You know, you could always find smaller details if you don't want it too big, you know. So this is nice. I think I have an even smaller one right here. Look at this tiny little thing. For me, appliques, I'm always going to use them to match the fabric that I'm working with. So I don't want to use, like, I don't want to put them on a contrasting fabric, because I just want it to sort of blend in. I found just one dark red one. Look how pretty this is. And you know, red is my thing. And then this red thing, I don't know what it's for. It's not like a neckline. I don't know what it's for, but it's red and I got it. I'm super excited to have these. I mean, I'm gonna be working with these for ages, and I'm just happy I can add something tiny to a project to just make it unique, totally different to anyone else's. And I love that about sewing. So let's hop into the sewing. I'm gonna show you how I dealt with the applique, how I stabilized the neckline, how I finished it really neatly, how I bound the back and the partial armhole here. It's super practical, and you'll get really good concepts about how you can do this yourself. You know, for sure you have different shapes of appliques, but you'll get a good idea of what to do. So let's see. This is my front pattern, and that is the top area right there. And I just want to compare what the shapes are in relation to my applique piece like this. Just going to fold it in half and place it on top, and just align the center front up here with the shoulders. So I am going to be catching that top part of this applique into the seam allowance. So I'm putting it right there on the edge and right there on the center. You can see that the shoulder is a little wider right here, but that's fine. I'm gonna need to finish the back armhole with binding, and the back that's gonna be slightly wider is gonna end up being the same level here once I finish the back armhole. So I don't really need to make many changes at all for this applique to fit this pattern. I'm gonna be finishing the armhole partially over here. So this section of the armhole is not gonna be bound. You know, the edge of the applique is going to be the way that area is finished, but I will be binding the back armhole that will be sewn here, and then this rest of the armhole there partially. What I'm going to do, because this is a woven and slightly different to what I've done with knits, I'm just going to cut my regular front as normal, and once that's cut out and I'm going to stabilize everything, then I'm going to place this on top and baste it along where it's going to be. Then I'm going to need to finish the edge that I'm going to cut out with a serger and then sew this on permanently. I can't just trim it off afterwards like you do with knits. Knits don't fray. I'm only going to finish the back neckline and the armholes partially with this bias tape. I made it from the same fabric, and I've used a bias tape maker with the 18 on the back. That means this is 18 millimeters or almost 3/4 of an inch. I'm not going to trim it any narrower because this is a fabric that will actually give and conform to curves really well. I'm going to be sewing right there in that fold there at 1/4 of an inch. Here is the back neckline. I have already pinned my bias tape along the back. I've got my pins exactly where that first fold is, and I'm just going to sew this down. The tape here is right sides together with the back neckline here. This is curved, it is a neckline, so after sewing it, I'm clipping into the seam allowance every 3/8 of an inch or so. Now I'm going to understitch. I've got the seam allowance of the binding tucked in under the binding. This is the right side of the fabric, but I'm not going to do it from the very edge. I'm going to leave a little bit without it, about 5/8 of an inch on the edge. There is the binding, and there is understitching a little away from there. That is really important because this is actually going to enclose the shoulder seam and the neckline later, so it'll really get in the way if you do the understitching all the way to the end. So for now, I'm just going to leave it like this. I'm not going to fold it to the inside and finish it. That will be done later when I'm sewing the shoulder seam right there. Here I have my front piece. I cut my front piece as normal with a normal neckline. I just wanted to make sure everything was going to align on the fabric before I cut what I don't need away. So I put some pins here in the center front so I can align the center of the applique, and then right there and on the shoulders. So I have this type of invisible pen. When you use it and then you put heat on it, it disappears. And I'm just going to draw a faint line around here, slightly underneath the applique, right there. But I'm not going to cut right on the edge. I want there to be at least like 3/8 of an inch of an overlap. I don't want it to be like a neat one I've made where I cut right on the edge after sewing the applique basically. I'm going to just remove these pins now so you can see my faint mark there. I'm not going to cut it out straight away. What I'm going to do is sew on top as a type of stay stitch so that this doesn't end up stretching out and deforming out of shape. I've kept one pin there to mark where the center front is, and I'm going to shorten my stitch length a little to 2.6. Okay, so there you can see my white line and where I sewed. I did some stay stitching, and now with my scissors I'm just going to carefully cut about 3/8 of an inch above that all along this shape. This stay stitching is helping this stay in its shape and not stretch out. I did draw this following the shape of the applique, but not exactly. So now I'm left with this shape. All the rest is going to be completed with this now. I know I need to leave about 3/8 of an inch of the fabric underneath the applique here, and that's going to complete the armhole there. So I'm going to go to the serger and carefully clean this all up, nice and finished, and then I can put the applique on top and sew it right there. As I serge, I've got this all in my hand. I don't want to let it hang off the table. It's delicate and I really don't want this stretching out. I'm also being careful not to trim anything away here with the blade. Okay, so after serging that, making it super neat, making sure the middle of this applique is at the center front, matching that pin, I've just put it on top there, overlapping the fabric, so I have about 3/8 of an inch behind the applique. What's important over here where the raw armhole is to leave a 1/4 of an inch hanging off here. You need that fabric extra there to be able to sew this binding. You know, the same seam allowance you have on that first fold, I need right there so that we end up with a clean edge right there. I really don't want to try and sew this with the pins there. I think it's going to move. So I'm going to give it a quick hand baste right there to hold it in place, and then I'm going to sew. Now I'm just using a straight stitch, using a shorter length, about 2.6, just to make sure I catch everything. And I'm just trying to follow the shape here as close as I can to the edge to sew it all down. Much easier to do without the pins there for sure. I think it's super neat. It's very, very safe and secure. On the wrong side, you're going to have the serged edge there, so nothing's going to fray. There's the stitch that I did for stay stitching and the one that's got the applique on, so that makes this area of the tank really, really safe and secure. It's all good. So I'll just whip out the basting stitch. Now what I'm going to do is just sew this onto the back here at the shoulder seams. I've put them together, right sides together right here. Here is the back where we have that binding. The edge of the applique is going to be right against that seam. I'm going to take this binding and wrap it over here like that. Over here on the edge, I need a 1/4 of an inch from the back piece hanging over, because the same thing, I need that seam allowance to sew on the binding. This is how you sew that, just a straight stitch. Same as on this side. Get the edge of the applique, put it right against that seam that unites the back with the binding, and bring the binding over like that. Then make sure to have a 1/4 of an inch hanging off there. Okay, so that's how the shoulder seam looks. Now when we flip this way, flip it like this, and you can see that the applique is going to come in through there really neat, and the binding on the back is going to be covering it. And after we've done this on both sides, we can actually top stitch the binding down for the back. So I'll just repeat this on the other shoulder and then clean this up with the serger. Okay, here's the back. I've flipped the binding to the inside. It's sort of sandwiching the applique in there. It's super neat, and it's been serged. And now I was able to just hand baste the binding inside, and now I can just sew it. Here is the other side of the shoulder seam. That side has already been finished. That's the neckline. This is the armhole. And I'm doing basically the same thing. I've just put my binding on top. I've cut the binding right there to match the length of the shoulder seam there. And I've sewn it right on the edge. And I've gone all the way around here, snipped. And then here on the front, where I have this front part of the applique, I've cut it longer also. Here, all I'm going to do when I fold it in is just fold this edge there, and I'm going to hand sew that little bit to the seam allowance that we have there. That's how that side's going to be finished. But over here, we're going to do the same thing as we did with the other side of the shoulder, and it's basically como esto. I'm basically going to bring the applique here, make it meet the seam, bring this over, and I'm going to sew this section of the shoulder seam again here. Just right there, serge that to finish it off. And then when we flip it like this, it's going to have the same finishing as it does on this side. It's exactly the same thing. This is mine. I know black is really annoying and hard to see. This is a heavier rayon linen blend. It's still very drapey, but just a medium weight fabric. And this has a touch of linen only, about 13-14% there. I hope you can see the texture of the fabric. It's so, so lovely. I love this fabric. I have it in many colors. And it's all the same, center back seam, no slit there at the back. I have a curved hem, very nice. And what makes this special is this applique here. Inside it's finished so neatly, everything's sort of enclosed. You saw how I did that, how I've hidden the applique underneath the binding for the back, and I've done the same for the armhole. You can see that the applique is actually in the shoulder seam and the binding is covering that there. and covering it there. So this is the neckline, this is the armhole. That was the same technique. Here I have the binding that I made from the same fabric. This fabric is nice to work with and it adapts really well to curves, so I don't think I need to trim the binding narrower for this type of fabric, because you see that my mom's binding is narrower. This is saddened bias tape that you buy. I always trim this narrower because I don't think it conforms to the curves as nicely as rayon does, rayon linen does. So that's why this one looks a little wider. And this is the front, that's where the applique is. I just had the binding a little longer, folded it to the back and just hand sewed that down to that fabric that overlaps right there, that is behind the applique. So it's super neat, it was very fun. It's super neat inside. I love how it looks inside. It makes me really happy. There's no raw edges anywhere. And let's see it on. Here is my Harmony blouse in a black rayon linen blend. It is sleeveless. It's an extra large with a standard bust. Original length here, the only change was lowering the bust up by a little, 3/8 of an inch. And the top is really simple. The neckline is gorgeous. You'll see the details up close. You can see how much ease there is here around the hips and the waist. Super comfortable to wear. But then you have a really nice fit up on the top with the buster, and the center back seam gives it really nice shaping at the back. Here is the neckline up closer that has an applique. The fabric was trimmed away from the back, but on the inside it's finished neatly with a serger. It's been stabilized, so it's a really durable finish. All the other rest of the armhole that doesn't have the applique has been bound inside. It's very neat. And it's just gorgeous. I'm just so happy with this. I have it over a really old teal linen pencil skirt that I love. I love this look. I would go to church like this. Don't forget to check out the Harmony blouse today. It's only $5. It's a great day to get it for such a steal. You can have a lot of fun making these. I will link all the resources I have available for this pattern already on the channel. I've had a lot of fun with this pattern, lots of hacks. You can do a lot with this pattern. You can make many and you're always going to be happy. Find everything down in the description box, my affiliate link. And don't forget to use the code Karina10 at checkout for an extra 10% off every time you purchase at Love Notions. I will see you again back next week, I think with a bit more normalized content and frequency. Mommy's leaving on Sunday, so that is super sad. As usual, when you're having fun, time flies and the 4 weeks have seemed like a week. I'll see her again at the end of the year, so I'm looking forward to that. Have an amazing weekend and I'll see you again next week. Bye.